Fake politician smile on.
Fake politician smile. Oh, did you? That's what I think of politicians.
That's what I was just telling. He sent me pictures and videos of it. I can't wait to borrow it.
I can't wait to buy it.
Well, as soon as we got the truck away home, he's like, how much you going to charge me for that when you get rid of it?
He said 47.
Yeah, something like that.
Did he told me?
It's negotiable. It's negotiable. We'll figure it out. Wait a minute. If we're going to negotiate, you got to go the other way. Help me drive him up. Help me drive him the other direction, see? Hey, what's going on, man? Appreciate you guys. We got some folks in attendance, and for all of you watching out there for our every other Friday night seminar. Last time we did one of these, we were all the way over in Hurst, Texas, dang near to Fort Worth.
Yeah,
we was over there riding bulls at Billy Bob's at night and talking about bass fishing during the day. You know what I'm saying? But we did break loose and do one at Fun and Sun at their tackle show they do every winter, which is a lot of fun. We were glad to do it there. And now we're back here at our home base, Lake Fork Marina. This is Friday, January 31st, I believe.
3-1.
Last day of January, February 1st tomorrow. The next one of these will actually be on Valentine's Day, so probably won't see very many of y'all on that. And if I do, you're the real ones. If you got the guts to show up here on a Friday night on Valentine's Day, hey, I appreciate you. I'm gonna tell you, I do. I'll be here.
ZW will be here. That's a meaningless holiday created by Hallmark to sell cards. That's all it is.
Folks, this is why we keep him around. It ain't for his fishing ability or knowledge. It's just for his perspective on life in general.
I just keep it real up in here.
You do keep it. I know you do, and I appreciate it. You kind of have to if you're gonna roll with me. I'm just telling you. Like, we ain't got time for a lot of nonsense around here, but it is a really interesting time of year. I see a lot of people come out here and go fishing. There's more and more boats starting to show up every day when you get to this time of year, but obviously not nearly as many as we'll see a month from now or 2 months from now, especially. We're a little bit early to the party. These are the guys that I think are probably the most passionate about bass fishing that are getting out there and doing it right now, suffering through some of the cold days and whatnot and foul weather that we get at the end of January and early February. But the guys that come out here this time of year, and I've said this a couple times in these seminars, they know something that not everybody knows, and that's there's a lot of really big fish that really need to eat this time of year. There's a lot of the bigger dominant female bass. Those are the most pregnant ones. You know, a 10-pound bass will typically lay around 50,000 eggs, which means she's got a lot of mouths to feed right now. Yesterday she had to start eating. I mean, we're in full pre-spawn mode where these big females, or the highest percentage of fish that are willing to bite right now, are all big female bass.
That's right.
And so that's what lends itself to when you can find, especially when you can find a little area that's holding a little wad of fish, it'll often be a whole group of big female bass. And how many times do you get to go fishing when bass fishing and go out and catch 8 fish and 5 of them be over 6 pounds? You know, and on Lake Fork and these East Texas fisheries around here, like, that's a very real common thing this time of year. Like, I'm not saying you go out and catch 6 fish over 6 pounds every day, but if
the potential is there.
If you catch 8 or 10, there's a good chance half of them are going to be over 5 or 6 pounds. I mean, that's just the realistic thing that happens right now. So it's maybe my favorite time of year to fish because the lake is really uncrowded and you have that potential for the big bite.
Well, you know, a lot of people, so many people in the bass fishing industry look forward to March, April, May.
They get up on the beds,
fishing the spawn. I call this PB season.
It is.
You know, football season comes to an end in 2 days, and then PB season starts.
That's right. We go from FB to PB.
That's right.
That's right. 100%. And so we've been talking about that a lot lately. In the last seminar that I did do at Fun and Sun, my segment was on the early pre-spawn pattern and fish that drive really, really shallow on warming trends. And then I had a question from one of the viewers. So we do try to follow up on these as many times as we can. I know sometimes maybe one slips my mind, but if you have a topic that you want us to go over in depth at one of these seminars or on one of our instructional guides network type videos, man, drop it in the comments. Text it to our number that's always posted on everything. Just reach out to us any way you can, and we try to go over everything, because whatever you guys want to see, we want to talk about. And tonight we're going to talk about something that's a whole lot of fun. And we're going to talk about catching them on the topwater, which is a lot of fun. And most people think of catching them on topwaters in the warmer time of the year.
Yeah, it's very uncommon this time of year.
The bait we're going to talk about tonight, I would say, is primarily thought of as a summertime and fall bait. But tonight we're going to talk about fishing with a buzz bait in January and February. And that may sound a little bit shocking, and I get it. It kind of is, but there is a thing, and especially, and now this is a selective deal. It's not just like, you're not going to go out there on a 30-degree morning and go throw your buzz bait and get whacked. Like, that's not how it's going to go down. You need to have the warm nights, and that's the key. When we're talking about warming trends this time of year, we're talking about early fish pushing in, getting set up to spawn early. What you really have to have is the warm nights to make that water temperature climb in a hurry. And you want that water temperature to be climbing in a hurry, because what that does is create a very drastic difference in water temperature between the shallow water in the backs of these creeks and the backs of these big flat pockets, shallow areas. Broad expanses of extremely shallow water is what you're looking for. The night temperatures, that is what you have to make this deal go down. The night temperatures need to be above the water temperature. So like right now, the water's been in the lower, floating back and forth, lower in mid 50s, 55, 56, I think it goes back down to 52. And so what you need right now for this to happen is we need a night or 2 or 3, ideally. That would be great if you have 3 warm nights where the air temperature at night is warmer than the water temperature. That water temperature is going to skyrocket in these shallow areas. And that's what we were talking about. You need that broad expanse of shallow water to really make it warm up faster, because the deeper the more deeper water there is closer to the shallow water, the longer it's going to take that water to warm up, because more water volume. It's like if you have a big old jug of water and you stick it in your freezer, it's going to take longer for that to freeze than if you have a tiny little shot glass of water. That's going to freeze a lot faster. Same thing on the warming trend. A little bit of water is going to warm up a lot faster than a whole lot of water. And the deeper that water is, the more volume there is. So that's the areas you need to be seeking out, is these extremely, that's where they're going to spawn first. That's what's going to warm up first. It doesn't matter how dirty it is. Unless there's it's totally blown out from flowing rains, like floods, and you've got debris floating on the water's not too dirty. I don't care if it's brown as that table right there. It's not too dirty. But look for those shallow expanses of water that'll warm up quick. And then that warming trend, when you get that warm night, what happens is, like right now, like this weekend, we're going to have warm days. And that's great. And that will warm the water up some, but then at night it cycles back down, because the nighttime temps are still in the 40s and the water temps in the 50s. So it's 70 degrees in the day. The water warms up a little bit over this baseline of, say, 54. Let's just call it 54. So the water climbs up to 56, and then at night it drops down to 53 or 52. And it just kind of stays, and it might track up a little bit, but not a real drastic difference. When you get that night that warms, it stays above this water temp. So you get warming during the day, and then it never goes back towards that. So if it warms up to 57 during the day, and the nighttime temp is 60, well, it just stays right here at night, right around that same temperature. And then tomorrow, when it's 70 again, it climbs up some more. And see how far away we're getting from this baseline now? And so if you have that, 2 or 3 warm nights in a row, I've seen it to where even in a relatively small pocket, at the mouth of that pocket, I've seen it be 50 degrees, and at the back of that pocket be 60 degrees. Well, when there's that drastic of a difference, fish don't all flood to the back of the pocket because there's a 3 or 4 degree difference. But when there's a 10 degree difference, all the bait fish and all the fish are going to the dirt. They're going as far back in there to get as warm as they can. They've been cold all winter, so everything's going to get in this much water. Now, pre-spawn fish are still lethargic fish. They're not just super active in feeding. They are still cold. Even the big aggressive female pregnant bass that we talk about that bite this time of year. I'm not saying that pre-spawn is the time of year where you're going to go out there and just whack them however you want to. That's not what happens. You have to work for these bites. A lot of the baits we use this time of year are totally based on reaction. Whether it's a crankbait, a square lip crankbait bouncing off of a stump, or a chatterbait hitting some grass and getting ripped out, or a lipless crankbait. These are things that make fish react that don't want to bite because they are cold, so they're not just super aggressive biting. Well, when they start getting in this much water where they can barely keep their fins underwater because that's what feels the best, there's nothing you can really fish up there efficiently that's not going to get bogged down in some type of grass or slop or something like that. It's not going to pick up junk off the bottom, because even your chatterbaits and such like that, you can't fish a lipless crankbait in this much water without the hooks dragging the bottom. You know what I mean? Your square bill dives too deep. As far as a reaction bait goes, there's nothing on earth that will cause more commotion and more frustration and get more of an angry reaction from a bass than a buzzbait. What's going on? What's going on with you, homie? But a buzzbait, and when they're in this much water, now that buzzbait's like right on their head, like their head's right here, and that buzzbait's going right here. And so that's why this works so well. When they get extremely shallow and you put this loud sucker on top of their head, it's like if you were you've been cold all winter, like you've been sitting out the deer stand all morning, you didn't bring enough clothes and the propane ran out of the heater and you're freezing. When you get back to that cabin, you're going to want to sit next to that fire and just kind of stretch out and lay around a little bit. Well, that's basically what these fish are doing on these extreme warming trends. They're getting up in that dirt, shallow water and wanting to just chill out. And then if something were to come by your head and just go, like eventually you're going to slap at it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, a fish don't have no hands, so when a big dominant fish wants to slap at a buzzbait because it's irritating them, they bite the fire out of it and try to kill it, and then you got them. So let's talk about what buzzbaits we're going to use in this particular situation. I always use a big solid colored, I want the most obvious, loud, obnoxious buzzbait I can get my hands on. I only use black. Now I think white is fine. I think it needs to be a solid color. You don't want any kind of translucent shad pattern. You don't want to take the skirt off and put a swim bait on. We're not trying to imitate anything that lives. This has nothing to do with tricking them into thinking they're biting a shad or anything. You're solely trying to make them as mad as you can. So I want the biggest, most solid colored, obvious, loud, obnoxious buzzbait that I can find. My very favorite one is actually this bait right here. And this is, back in the day, long time ago, there was a buzzbait called a Booger Man buzzbait, and then there was one called a Head Knocker or something like that. It was basically the same thing. And now this is a gentleman that actually comes down here and fishes a lot. He's from Illinois, but he's remade this bait because they've been discontinued. It's called Rowdy Buzz, and both of these are available downstairs here at Lake Fork Marina. But I'm gonna open this package up and show you what this buzzbait has going on. It's pretty neat. Pretty unique anyway. And this is the only one that I can find still made that does this. And what it does is this blade actually will contact the head. Y'all hear that? Mm-hmm. And so then when it goes faster, it goes. And when you put the pressure of the water on there and it starts clanking that head, it is the loudest buzzbait you've ever heard. I mean, it's ting, 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 ting. I mean, it's super loud and obnoxious. Now, you can flex this arm out a little bit and it doesn't hit the head. And you're always having to adjust it as you fish it when you catch a fish because they'll flex it out a little bit on you. But you can also bend it down a little bit and you can make it hit the head even harder. Hear how it sounds different now? So you have to play and get the right deal. You want it to be, for this deal, you want it to be as loud and obnoxious as possible without getting fouled up. Because sometimes you get it too close, like right now I probably got it too close. And when you reel it in, that blade will just get stuck and your buzzbait will just reel in without turning. So you have to kind of play that deal back and forth right there. But I have caught some of the biggest bass I've ever caught in my life on this head knocker buzzbait at the right times of year. And one other thing I like about this particular model of a head banging buzzbait made by this guy right here, it's Rowdy Buzz. The hook is a little bit longer than what you'll normally see. So I don't have to use a trailer. Because a lot of times on these vegetation lakes like we have, not so much this year on Fork because the water's been low, so there's not just a ton of shoreline vegetation. But in previous years when the lake's been full through the winter, you'll have a bunch of that old hyacinth and pondweed and just that shoreline vegetation that floats around in the back of these shallow pockets. Yeah, duckweed, stuff like that. And a trailer hook on that when you're trying to throw it in around that slop can be a little bit of a, cause you to be inefficient. Cause you to lose a lot of cast, getting stuff hung up on there and watered up on there. So I like not having to throw a trailer hook. Now, if you can get away with it, even with this long hook, I suggest throwing a trailer hook this time of year. But if there's too much slop, you can't sometimes. Like I'd rather not fish a trailer hook and miss one once in a while than to lose half my cast because I'm always pulling junk off my bait. And that's just a decision you have to make on your own deal there. But I like this one because it does have that long shank hook, but still a heavy gauge. Like you're not bending that hook out. It's not happening. Now, there's a couple different ways to rig up your setup for fishing a buzzbait. And there's different thoughts on this. I don't like throwing it on braid. And the reason I don't like throwing it on braid is because braid will jack your buzzbait up, the arm. There's no buzzbait, well there's one, I'm fixing to show it to you right now. But most buzzbaits, and especially this one right here, which I like because it makes all that noise, this arm, if you get a 5 or 6 pound bass on this, and you got 50 or 65 pound braid on this little arm right here, that sucker's going to come unfolded like a lawn chair on you. And you're going to have heck getting it lined back up where it'll run true and hit that head just right. It's just going to be kind of a pain. So I like to fish it on, you can fish it on mono or fluorocarbon. It really doesn't matter. Because fluorocarbon does sink, but you're just reeling it the whole time. So it's not like you're trying to walk the bait and all that like you are with other topwaters. But I'll fish it on, 17 to 20 pound line and throw it on a, something over 7 foot, because a lot of times you'll make a long cast and get the bite at the end of that long cast. You need to move a lot of line and put that hook in them, especially with a big single hook like this. So I'll throw like a 7.3 to a 7.6 heavy, maybe a medium heavy. I really like a heavy rod though if I'm fishing fluorocarbon on this technique to kind of counteract some of that stretch in the fluorocarbon and get that hook home on a long cast. The one thing you got to be conscious of, if you're throwing it on a heavy action rod, which I tend to overpower a lot of my rods. I'll throw heavier rods than you really probably should a lot, because I'd rather have more power than I need and just back off a little bit on the hook set when I have to. If you get short struck on this buzzbait, and you just have to kind of be conscious of this, if you get short struck on this buzzbait, say he bites it from here to them stairs, and you got that heavy action rod, don't go to swinging real hard. Like, calm down a little bit and just kind of, you know what I'm saying, pull into him more, versus if he's right there and you go wham, you're going to lose a lot of fish because you just got too much rod too close to the boat, and that line's not counteracting that stretch. So, but if you like fishing it on braid, that's fine. And one of our local bait companies around here, Santone Lures, has made one specifically for that. This is called the Rowdy Buzz. And it doesn't contact the head, but they have a very loud metal arm clacker on here. It makes a lot of noise. This is a great buzz bait to throw on this pattern as well. And I'll pass this around. You can see it. The arm on this thing is much stouter. You can fish this on braid. You can, like, if you're that guy that just, like you, the way you like to set the hook on everything, no matter what you're fishing, you're going to want to use the braid buzz and just go ahead and tie it on your big stick in your braid and just bust their heads open and horse wrangle them and boat flip them. This would be a better deal if that's your style of fishing. You know what I mean? Like, listen, if Greg Hackney was doing this, he'd probably need this one right here. Because there's just certain people, that's just how they fish. They're going to pop them and they're going to wrench them, and go ahead and get this heavy arm braid buzz made by Santone Lures. It's a great product. It catches them really well. It holds up extremely well because that's what it's designed to do. So I'll pass that around. But again, a black buzz bait. As far as size, when we're talking about weight, I like to stay around a ½ ounce or less. The deal is you want this bait to stay in their face as long as possible, as long as it's still making all that racket. So you don't want to get one that's too heavy. If you start getting a heavier buzzbait, you got to reel it too fast. And a lot of that depends on the blade size too. So the bigger the blade, the more it'll hold that weight up in the water column at a slower speed. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, like, that's one thing. Yeah, with this Rowdy Buzz, I would be throwing a 3/8 or a 1/4 ounce, but in their models, the 3/8 and the 1/4 ounce, the blade size keeps getting smaller. And the one thing that I'm not going to sacrifice on this technique and this pattern is I'm not going to sacrifice noise. I want the big blade. I want to make as much racket as I can. That's the biggest deal to this thing right here. So I'm not going to go lighter and go slower and sacrifice the size of the blade and the noise factor. Any questions at all so far on throwing a buzzbait in January? Y'all think I'm lying to you? A lot of people, when I tell them I can catch them on a buzzbait in January, they're like, no, you can't. But you can. But it's the right situation. It's a situational deal. Y'all got to ask some questions now. Somebody's got to ask something. Tank!
All right. I'm working on it.
I know. Tank's our analytical mind.
So we just had a cold front come through.
Mm-hmm.
I know last 2 weeks it was 54-degree water.
Mm-hmm.
And we came down this last couple days, nothing.
Just struggling?
Last 2 years, or last 2 days, cold front shut it.
Yeah.
Shut
We
everything
got
down.
one good one, 20 each one.
Everything
Oh,
deep.
that's a big one. Yeah. So, everything deep. So, what happens in that situation is when you have fish that have pulled in shallow, because we did have some warming trends, weeks before this. What happens is those shallow fish don't leave. They don't leave, but they do get tough to catch. And I mean tough to catch. And it's hard if you're coming in from out of town and you haven't kind of been on track with them. And then you go out there and you're like, well, which one of these awesome looking shallow water areas? Because Lake Fork's full of areas that look awesome. It is. It is. You pull everywhere, every time you pull around the corner, like, dude, this is the best place I've ever seen. And then the next area, and the next area. The deal is you got to get in an area that you know is holding them, you have confidence is holding them up shallow, and you got to get near the first drop-offs, whether that's a little drain or a creek channel or whatever that might be, and you got to fish extremely slow and methodical on the cold front day. So, when you get after a cold front, this ain't going to be your pattern. It's going to be more of a jerk bait deal or even a weightless stick bait deal or sometimes just grinding a lipless crankbait or a square bill through there over and over and over again to get a reaction is the deal. You have to make a lot of casts to get a bite in the same area sometimes. It's a tough task for a guy that's not from here, hasn't been down here very much. You just got here on the backside of a cold front. That's a really tough task to ask you to understand and do. And I'm not trying to sell you a guide trip. I don't have any to sell. I'm fully booked. But I'm telling you, that's one of the big reasons why there's so many guides here, is because in that situation, you come down here, it's good if you're coming from out of town to hire a guide on that first day to kind of give you some confidence in what you're doing. Somebody that's been on the water a lot recently can really help you in a lot of ways there. But that's tough. I mean, that is tough. Now, Once you figure out where they are and you get confidence in that drain or that creek or whatever that drop is, they're never alone. That's the beauty. It's real predictable. Once you kind of figure it out a little bit, it gets real predictable because they're never alone. When those fish have been up on a warming trend and then it gets cold, they're sucking back to that drop off, whatever it is, drain, creek, channel, bend, whatever, and they're never going to be by themselves because all the fish that pulled into that flat on that warming trend are now all sucked back into the same spot. And so once you get a bite or two, you can usually hunker down and milk an area and catch some really quality fish off and on throughout the day in that one given area. So this is a time of year on the cooling trends where we really spend some time in one little stretch.
Last year you talked about the pipe docks, and I found that in the last couple of weeks
Yeah.
that's really the steel.
The metal docks.
And so they might
Yeah.
hurt.
That is true. That is a good one. So yeah, especially when you get sun this time of year, cold time of year, when you get a little bit of sun come out, those metal pole docks, they will conduct heat off that, and it's just like a little, they get right up, right here. It's close as I ever want to be. You don't ever let me do that again.
There is sun down here? You've been going all weekend.
I know, I think we're going
1 hour sun.
Tomorrow and Sunday.
we're supposed to get
1
some.
hour sun the whole week.
Well, at least you didn't draw one of them trips where you come down here and you get every season in one day, because that happens too.
Yeah.
I guarantee you'll go from winter to spring to summer to fall in 24 hours around here sometime. But
Gonna be a lot of sun this weekend.
we'll have sun this weekend. But
Y'all
yeah,
gonna be around.
Gotta go home.
the deal out here is there's not a lot of rock. Normally, you think about that heat conduction being on rock, and that's a very good winter pattern on a lot of lakes. He actually lives over in DFW. He lives right down the road from Ray Hubbard. Nice job, bud. And it has tons of riprap banks, rocks on bridge aprons and dams, and there's all kinds of rock on that lake. And that's normally your heat conductor, but out here we don't really have rock to speak of. Not enough and not deep enough to matter. But those docks, pilings, will conduct heat, even the wood ones, but the metal ones do it even better. Especially if you see a metal one. If you see, another little dock tip, if you see a metal arm dock that has ropes tied off the braces sticking down in the water, well, all those ropes are tied to a Christmas tree or a brush pile with an anchor on the bottom of it. So now you got a metal dock with a whole bunch of bonus cover underneath it. Now you're in business. When you see them little white ropes or anything that looks like it's tying something down underneath the water, that's a dock you want to fish. Do you have something, Tank?
Yeah, I was gonna go back to the buzzbait.
Okay.
So once those fish move up in the shallow, are you gonna see them just cruising along, staying warm? Are they gonna relate to something? I mean, what are we looking for exactly? I mean, are we throwing at something, targeting?
Good question. No. A little bit of no rhyme, no reason on that warming trend. They will get up and spread out and move. Now, obviously, if you see some signs of bait activity, concentrate on that area more. But no, you do not have to be relating, especially on an extreme. The more extreme the warm trend, the less you need to be worried about an elevation change or any type of structure for that matter. Now, I do like to try to, again, heat conduction. So surface grass, potato weeds, stuff like that, matted surface grass, I like to focus on those edges. Also standing timber. Standing timber, especially standing timber, has a little bit sticking out of the top of above the surface, which there's a lot of right now because the lake's still a little bit low. In those areas, the most important thing is to find that expanse of shallow water, that big expanse of shallow water. That's the most important thing. Get somewhere where you can cover a bunch of shallow water that's going to warm up quick. The water temperature is the key deal here over everything. And once you're in that area, we've talked about this before, you get in a lake like Fork that's got timber and grass everywhere. Well, ignore all that stuff. Pick where you're going to fish if there was none of that there, and then fish what's there. Same deal here. Find the right water that's going to warm up the best first, and then fish whatever's present. Now, they will hug up the timber. They will hug up the grass lines. They're still bass. They still act like bass. But the most important thing is finding the right type of area that will warm up water temperature-wise first. You're not going to see them. The deal with all these areas that warm up first, I've never really seen it be an area that has clean water. They always have the dirtiest water. The areas that warm up first are the biggest expanses of shallow water. That's always the dirtiest water. Generally speaking, for the most part, especially this time of year, get these hard rains this time of year. Not as much grass on the lake to filter the dirt content out, so the water will almost always be pretty darn dirty in these areas that you're wanting to throw that buzzbait this time of year. We good?
Yeah, good.
All right. Any other questions? Justice Anderson. Don't look at me like you lost. You gonna go throw that buzzbait in your pond tomorrow? You're not?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. He's gonna throw that Yamasenko. That's all that kid knows how to throw.
No doubt.
Hey, just take that Yama, whatever, take that hook, go right through the middle of it like that.
That's what they do. They some wacky worming. They some wacky worming fools down there on the Anderson farm. I know. Yes, sir.
How do you change your thought process on, from one day to the next when this time of year, from when it's dead calm to when it's got a breeze?
Whew. Yeah.
When you go out.
Okay, that's a great question, and that's one that's a little more complex for this time of year than it is for the rest of the year. Okay, once we kind of get done, and I don't like, I try to run from the wind during spawn a little bit because I like to sight fish. So I don't want to be in windy areas when I'm trying to sight fish. That makes it harder to see them. But other than sight fishing, and this time of year, I want wind. If we're dealing with a warming trend, okay, and I'm looking for fish that are looking for the warmest water, I really want to find some areas that don't have a lot of wind on them. And the reason that is because still water warms faster than moving water. Moving water will tend to bring in more of the deeper, cooler water from the lake and kind of churn it up with it a little bit. Now, one exception to that is if you've had just sure enough hard warming trend like we're talking about, well, that surface water that's been warming can get warm quick, and it can get blown into an area. And so then sometimes wherever the wind's blowing will get warmer. The big deal is I'm not necessarily looking for wind or no wind. I'm looking for water temp first and foremost right now. Okay, I will fish calm and windy, but I'm looking for water temp first and foremost. And for the buzzbait bite in particular, I like slick calm water. To me, when that water's moving, that buzzbait's not nearly as irritating as it is when that water's slick calm. When it's slick calm quiet in there, that buzzbait is loud and everything in that area knows it's on its head. When that wind's ripping in there a little bit and you got a little chop on the water, that buzzbait's not bothering them near as much because everything's moving and making noise. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So for this buzzbait deal, I want calm water. But really it's water temperature. And there is times when the surface temp can get blown into an area and warm a particular area up, and then there's times when that calm water is warmer, and you just kind of have to experiment and play that by ear.
Definitely can't be afraid to move around this time of year.
Not on a warming trend.
Right.
Like tomorrow, like right now, because we've kind of been on a cooling trend, and we're going to stabilize over this weekend and maybe warm a little bit, but not drastically. I would say moving around is not necessarily your best deal. Once you get in an area that you have confidence in that it's holding some fish, you don't want to go nowhere. It's not going to do you no good to nowhere. Those fish aren't everywhere. They're kind of condensed back into certain areas, and so just wandering around fishing here, there, and yon may not be the deal. I'm not telling you not to duplicate your pattern and get you a milk run set up, but once you get to an area, you want to fish that area that you know is holding them, not just fish the whole bay. Glade, I always like using glade because everybody knows glade, and glade is the epitome of what we're talking about. Big, broad expanse of flat, shallow water. I don't know if you guys know Glade.
Glade? What is it?
Glade Creek. It's a big round bay on the east arm of the lake. It's just probably the most popular creek in February and March on this lake as far as everybody fishes there. And so everybody kind of knows how it lays out. And it's a big round bay. And it's just got tons of water this deep. I mean, tons of it. But Glade's a great example. On a warming trend, I'll put that trolling motor down and go all over that thing. But today, I'm going to go right to my creek channel swings, my junctions, my drains, and I'm only going to fish those areas. Now, I might fish 5 or 6 different ones within Glade, but instead of just going down the bank and moving and covering a whole bunch of water, I'm going to pull up to an area, fish a small little defined area that has a drop-off, and I'm going to move to the next small little defined area that has a drop-off, and I'm going to fish all of those areas very methodically and thoroughly. So that's kind of a day-to-day deal depending on the trend there. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that the fish this time of year, what time of the year are they the most spooky? Because it just seems like they change attitude as far as how close you can, you're catching them to the boat versus different times as far as.
A lot of factors in that. Wind is a big factor in that. Now, wind is a big factor in that. When it's slick calm, yeah, they're not going to be near as apt to get right up on your boat. 100%. Also, I'm going to tell you, the more boats get on the lake, they're not going to be apt to get up close to your boat. Like, that's a thing. And the real obvious example of that is during sight fishing season. early in the year, like here in a few more weeks, we start getting a few pop up on beds. I can pull up on those fish and pull right up on them and be like, oh, there he is. We can all see him. He's right there. And we make 3 flips and we catch him. When we get to April, I'm like, oh, don't look at him. Don't raise your arm. Don't point at him. Like, there's some comment down below if you've been on a sight fishing trip with me and I've told you not to point. I'm not kidding you. Now that's a thing. When you start getting a bunch of boats out here, you'll be just kind of, and I'll just kind of cruise, and I literally will be so tactical about it where I'll have my boat going 1 speed and I won't come off it. I'll just keep going, and I'll see that fish, and I'll look, and I'll mark him, I'll kind of line him up where he is, and then we'll keep going way past him, and look way back around, and get way back where I can just barely kind of see the bed and maybe a little bit of a shadow of a fish. And I'll literally, as we go by him, be like, all right, there he is. And somebody will go, where? And I go, I can't point. Because I've had too many fish where I've gone by and went, and they go, shoo, when you raise your arm, when they start getting too many boats on them. So the more boats that get on a lake, or the more boats that are in an area, say Glade's real popular, right? So when we start getting later in February and all these boats start getting out here and Glade starts getting packed in February, yeah, no, they're going to stay away from them boats. Until they get locked onto a bed, they will stay away from them.
So to build off of that, I had an old timer tell me one time, I've had a lot of old timers tell me a bunch of stuff, but I had an old timer tell me one time that when you are, since we're coming up on the bed fishing season, on cloudier days, darker days, it's better to wear darker clothing. And on bright,
to try not to silhouette yourself.
That's right. Yeah. So like on a darker, cloudy day, you don't want to wear this. You know, you'd rather wear something like this. Is that, have you seen, I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with when you raising your arm, they kind of see that movement, right?
Yeah, I think for sure when they're real shallow, you got to do everything you can, especially the more pressure they get on them, to be tactical. Now, whether that's what clothes you wear, I've never gone that far, but my deal was I just always tried to stay far enough away from where they couldn't really see me. You know, luckily I've got good eyesight and I've fished enough over the years and I've been obsessed with sight fishing long enough that when I'm trying to see them, I can see them, you know, kind of a little bit better than most people can just because of having more time doing it. And we got any deer hunters in the house? I know we got a couple.
Yeah, ZW don't take them chances. When it's bed fishing season, it's a cloudy day, you don't see me out there in my mossy oak and my face mask, leafy wear. I'm going to look like a tree out there flipping it.
Yeah. That works too. We got some mossy oak in the crowd tonight. I mean,
The white boots, they'll see them.
the white boots.
I don't know about that.
You can't be raising them white boots up. J-Bo!
That's why I stay a little bit further back
Look
on the
at
bed.
here. Look at here. No, them white boots. He got on the truck tonight. I was like, he's wearing his camo shrimp boots.
Shoes.
I know. Well, they're the same boots. They're just not white.
They ain't white.
They had to
I know.
count.
The white
We
boots at
just
the
come out of
camp.
hunting season, so I painted the white ones up, you know.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to sandblast them down tomorrow and make sure they get
Are
it.
you gonna tell?
You know, the deal with seeing them from a distance, and that's my deal, is I just try to stay so far off them that I don't spook them that way. And I can't tell how many customers I have in like, dude, I can't see nothing from back here. And I'm like, well, so, we got to stay back here, bud. Sorry, you know, we can't get any closer. But the deal is looking for movement. It's like if you were a deer hunter in South Texas, and those deer are real gray down there, and in the wintertime during deer season, all the brush is gray. All the mesquite trees, all the brush is gray. And so you really can't see them deer in the brush unless they step out in the scenario. But the deal is you're looking for movement to see them early. Like you'll see just on the edge of the brush, you'll see movement, a flicker, something. Same deal when I'm trying to see fish from a distance. People have always asked me, how do I see those fish? I literally will stare at that bed. So once I've got a bed lined up and I know kind of where the bed is, as soon as I get my poles down and I get set up, the first thing I'm going to do, and people that have gone with me have seen me do this, I'll get right up on the front deck of the boat and I'll stand there 5-10 minutes sometimes without making a cast. And I'm literally just studying that bed. I want to know every dark spot, every light spot, every shadow around that bed. I want to know what it is. That way when something is out of place or something moves a little bit, my eye will catch it. And that's how I've trained myself to see bedfish from a further distance and in darker water than most people are able to. I'm looking for movement. And luckily I grew up hunting in areas where deer were hard to see and fishing. You know, I've done this a lot, so I have a lot of experience doing it, but it's about seeing the movement to see them from a distance. And I know this isn't supposed to be a sight fishing talk, but you said something related to sight fishing and then I was like, squirrel! Gone. So, but that's how I see them from far away. So I don't ever worry about the color clothes I'm wearing, but I don't ever wear, like I don't ever wear two things that match anyway, usually, so. I do have a gray hat and a gray hoodie on, so I'm doing really good today.
Well, I think Mama T-Dub laid your clothes out this morning.
She sure did. She sure did. Mama Tito's been taking care of old Billy boy.
She wanted to take care of your butt the other night.
We can't be talking. There's kids, man. Stop it.
That's right.
Stop it. All right. J-Bo, what are you doing? You get lost? You get lost and wandered
on in.
Got lost and wandered a couple hours south, and here he is. Awesome, man. Any more questions? Anything? No? Well, hey, I don't know. John, come on up here real quick if you don't mind. Zach, jump up real quick. Let John sit down.
All right, man.
Get out of here. We got a real fisherman here now.
Good to see you.
Some of you guys probably know this. This is my buddy Jonathan Boeing, and he has been a guide on Broken Bow Lake in Oklahoma for the last couple of years. Tank, you know Tank? All right, good. So you've been on Broken Bow for what, last 2 years, 3 years?
3.
3 years now, and he's really young, but he's one of the best young guys I've ever seen. I've told a lot of people, he reminds me a lot of Eric. If you knew Eric right, Eric started guiding when he was 19, and everybody's like, dude, you can't be a fishing guide when you're 19. Like, you ain't there yet. Except Eric was there, and he was, within the first year, one of the best fishing guides on the lake. And Jonathan is a whole lot like that, and I've seen what he's done on Broken Bow. And John, actually, I mentioned that he wandered a couple hours south because actually yesterday, officially moved here. So Jonathan is now a Lake Fork guide. Now, he's going to stay on the lake and fish his butt off every day for a little while before he starts running trips. But this spring, John's going to run some trips, and he's going to be the newest guide on Lake. He is officially the newest guide on Lake Fork because he just got here last night.
I did.
I was to get him lined out on where to go.
Yeah, that's right. You might want to stay away from Z-Dub.
Your Lake Fork guy spots.
Fishing lot spots, his personal.
Yeah.
$200
Markers, markers were places where people were doing. We found markers that were set up.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, for being out of town, spotting these markers that somebody spotted
Yeah.
creek bends and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. People do put stuff
How
on.
many markers you'll find this time
Yeah,
of
we
year.
were.
Yeah.
We spotted a creek feed in today.
Especially with the lake being low, you see a lot of those old stumps that are marked and everything like that. Yeah, that's
Pick
great.
them on up. I got some markers for sale out there.
Yeah.
I got 37 bucks.
But no, we're really excited to have Jonathan down here. I've been talking to him about this for a long time. I've been kind of keeping it under wraps, you know, not letting anybody know. But he is officially here now, and he's going to be fishing his butt off because that's what he does anyway. And I'm going to be excited to see what you do this year, man.
Thank you.
I need you to go out and find some new fish. I'm tired of fishing the same holes. Go find me some new spots.
I'm going out first thing in the morning.
I knew it.
I don't know to do this or this.
Hey, just go, baby. Put it on, go, and don't stop. That's it.
Don't do this or this, do that.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's it.
There you go.
Maybe a little bit of this or this, depending on where the stumps are.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
So we're glad to have him here and excited to have him here. In fact, 2 weeks from now, which will be Valentine's Day, just so you know, but I'm calling him right now. I'm calling dibs on him for an hour. John's going to come here and do the seminar with us in a couple weeks, and I ought to have some good fresh Lake Fork info because you fix to spend some time.
We hope anyway.
That's right.
We hope.
It may be just don't go. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's not, don't go. It's-
Don't worry about it right now, boys.
We hope not anyway.
I have a feeling like it probably won't go quite that way. Make sure we don't have any more questions. Anybody got any more questions before we get out of here tonight? Hey, man, I appreciate each and every one of you coming. Appreciate each and every one of you watching, and I appreciate Lake Fork Marina. J-Bo, let's go get some fish tomorrow, dog.
Go.
All right, we'll see y'all next time. Thank you.